Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you for attending this session this morning. My name is Sue Pather, and I'm the Siyaphumelela leader for UWC. And with me, as Bala has mentioned, for this presentation is Prof. Lawack, who is our DVC academic, Vanessa Brown, who is a project lead for our high priority modules, Elizabeth Booi, who is also a lead for the data analytics. Laetitia Permal is a lead for our mental health and well-being project. And Ermien van Pletzen is actually our Siyaphumelela coach on the Siyaphumelela UWC project. Our topic this morning, since we have joined the Siyaphumelela team with the second round, Siyaphumelela 2.0 project, is collaborating across university departments towards a holistic approach to student success. It's been a very exciting journey for us, and we actually wanted to share our experiences with you. So the outline for our presentation, Vanessa, can we go to the next slide? Will be as follows. We will start off with our UWC Student Success Framework, which actually grounds the whole Siyaphumelela project. And then we would talk about our ICAT process and planning more as a collaborative task, how we work through as a team in order to initiate the ICAT survey. We will also highlight our marketing tools and the engagement in order to get the survey on the go. And then finally, we would have our UWC coach, Ermien, who would reflect on our engagement as a team. So over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Sue. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Let me know if you can't. So as Sue indicated, I'm Vanessa Brown, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the UWC Student Success Framework. So I will keep the framework up as I talk. So UWC Siyaphumelela project represents a first for UWC as an intentionally collaborative approach involving multiple streams and 4 divisions associated with the 4 co-leads. Together, we have designed a data-driven approach that is aimed at addressing academic and non-academic barriers to student success. The 4 co-leads are senior staff or heads of various divisions located under different operational lines in the institution, mainly the Division for Learning, Teaching and Student Support, the Center for Student Support Services, the Academic Planning Unit, and the Business Intelligence Division. In our very earliest discussions, we were guided by the university's Student Retention and Success Framework, as well as our desire to collaborate to improve student success, particularly at the junior undergraduate level. As a result, our UWC Siyaphumelela project is purposefully aligned with the UWC Student Retention and Success Framework to lead and bolster the institutional student success efforts. So this framework was approved by Senate in 2019 and was a product of almost 3 years of institutional qualitative and quantitative research into student success, specifically into the factors impacting student success at UWC. We began our research out of the sobering recognition that in South Africa, the higher education system is one of low participation, high attrition, and low completion, and in addition is marked by low on-time completion and significantly delayed completion. The idea behind the framework was to adopt a research-led approach to understanding barriers and enablers, and in order to be able to design initiatives that correctly targeted the real challenges of student success. So this framework acknowledges that the landscape of student success is vast and complex, and that it is shaped by a complex, layered and dynamic interplay of events and circumstances related to personal, institutional, and contextual factors. It recognizes that academic factors, aspects of institutional culture, financial and socioeconomic factors, psychosocial dimensions, and issues of student wellness, safety, and security all impact student performance and success. The framework also prioritizes student voice, stressing that student success initiatives require mutual engagement of students and the university, that students must become key partners in the academic project, and it notes the lack of formalized processes at UWC of bringing student conversation into academic matters. Finally, the framework reminds us that we need to have sufficient knowledge about our students in order to effectively address student needs and predict and mitigate risks at every step of the student walk. This notion of the student walk is a concept borrowed from the work of the late George Sabotsky in the context of his work at UNISA. So just looking at the framework slide, you'll see that our framework is represented within 3 bands. The first band attempts to describe in detail the student journey from pre-registration to graduation and employment. The second band reminds us of the institutional roles and obligations with regard to the academic project and includes the provision of a high-quality infrastructure to support learning and teaching. And in doing so, it brings together the academic components with an evidence-driven approach. It includes quality assurance of learning and teaching and the student experience, and integrates these with the physical and ICT structure as well as with the administrative divisions. The third band points to aspects of the academic and the non-academic ecosystem of student support, which should be available to all students, including academic and socioeconomic support, support and development for the well-being, personal growth, and safety and security of all students. Finally, 8 key principles guide implementation of the framework, and I'll mention just a few. Our first and core principle is that student success is everybody's business. This principle is key to implementing the framework and recognizes that promoting student success requires an integrated approach that addresses and involves multiple dimensions of student development and support. Another principle is that student success must become central to the mission of the institution, as we believe change will not happen unless that is the case. Third, student success initiatives require mutual engagement of students and the university. And the last one I'll mention of the 8 is that we work across silos in a systemic and integrated approach with an effective implementation, management, and coordinated plan. So in conclusion, I've tried to demonstrate that it is the framework's organizing concept of an integrated and holistic approach to student success and student support at UWC, which has made possible a vision of collaborative action within the Siyaphumelela project. So in this presentation, we are going to reflect on our collaborations, our challenges and successes, and we will focus here specifically, as Sue has indicated, on one example of these efforts, namely our involvement in the Institutional Capacity Assessment Tool, or ICAT survey. And here I will hand over to my colleague, Laetitia Permal, to elaborate. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. So Vanessa has really set the context for the project and how we planned and put it into action. My focus really is on the ICAT, and you will notice that I want to foreground it by saying that we focused on 2 fundamental principles when considering how to approach the ICAT survey. One of those principles was the fact that planning is key, that we were not going to rush into sending out communication to the university community, but really strategically plan so that we could get and it lends in itself to the second principle. So the one is really focusing on planning, how key that is. And the second one is really how do you maximize diversity so that we get multi-stakeholder, we optimize multi-stakeholder engagement in the survey so that the voices, with student success, the student voice is critical. But I think one of the things we've also come to realize, and I think Sean alluded to that yesterday as well, is how important the staff voice is as well, so that those two parallels are critical. And so the ICAT, in doing that, you will notice that there are two planning phases. In the first phase, we looked at what would be the ideal time for UWC to actually administer the survey, as well as the capacity cafe. And in doing that, we set about doing presentations to numerous committees, such as the Senate Academic Planning, etc. And we engaged with SADI so that we could ensure that before we even sent out any communication, that at the high level that we would get as many people, it's like putting those hooks in place already so that people in management, people in executive can be aware of the importance of the ICAT, not just for Siyaphumelela, but for the university. And what was critical for UWC as well is that the timing was so important, in that when you look at where we are in terms of the pandemic, as well as the fact that UWC is embarking on the new IOP, the ICAT survey was really instrumental in helping us lead the university so that we can build that bridge between the student voice and institutional readiness and the changes we are able to make. So we had two planning phases. As you can see, the first one really focused on what is the best way, what are the best dates, and what is the best kind of communication that we use to get the maximum engagement from the university. One of the key things with the Student Success Committee as well is having two DVCs, both academic as well as student development and support, co-chairing our Student Success Committee, so that, again, that in itself, our practice reflects the principles that we want to really build on, the principle of holistic student success being everybody's business. So we had a workshop with the Student Success Committee, and again, even that committee is made up of stakeholders across the university, academic and non-academic. We had a recording because we realized that very often people do not engage in emails or they don't read emails. So the recording really was to hear the voice of the leader of the university, so that people can identify with the process even more so. And then, of course, we engaged with institutional advancement to get marketing, what would be the best way to market the survey to the university community. And then, so that process in itself took about 6 weeks. And we only launched the survey in mid-June. Mid-May. So on the 17th of May, the survey was launched, and we kept it open for 3 weeks. And what was really important for us was also within each of our areas of influence was to constantly remind people of the importance of engaging in the survey. It closed on the 7th of June, and we now have the ICAT, the results were analyzed by SADI, and then, of course, we received the ICAT report. And so the ICAT report is now what we will use to engage further in the Capacity Cafe, and we are planning that Capacity Cafe in July, so that it gives everyone, we are right in the middle of exams, it gives everyone, including students, because I think what is critical for UWC was the student voice is not only important in engaging for inputs, but even with the ICAT, please, sorry, I just want to emphasize the ICAT is for permanent staff members only. But for the project as a whole, we've really had students engaged on different levels, and so finding that balance between the student voice and now having the staff voice, I believe that it will really bolster the project as a whole for the institution. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to my colleague, Supatha.
Thank you, Laetitia. So colleagues, like Laetitia said, for us, the most important thing was actually planning. And in the planning, we had to be very strategic as to how we release the information to the academics. So our first step was, if you just click, Vanessa, first click, was the marketing team. The UWC leads met with the marketing team. And we firstly needed to inform them what the ICAT was all about and its purpose and its benefits before we sat and spoke to them about the strategic plan, how we wanted information to get out to the UWC staff community. So I think timing was very, very important in this. And our second slide, actually, if you click on the second one, was spreading the word. So once we had sat with the marketing team and worked out what we wanted to send out and when we wanted to send out, we also thought we needed to spread the word in community meetings, via emails, and also during our Phumelela at UWC launch, which was in early Feb. We had our launch. But at the launch, when we spoke about our plans for our first year Siyaphumelela activities, the ICAT was mentioned at that stage. Our community, we're talking about the communities was, as Laetitia mentioned, Senate Academic Planning, Senate Teaching and Learning Committee, also the Siyaphumelela Student Success Committee. So information was shared with deans, deputy deans, directors, managers, so that they were informed and they could actually send the message to their staff as well. Then our next step was the DVC video. The DVC academic sent out a video to all staff. And in this video, it's showing the DVC actually completing the ICAT and encouraging other staff members to complete the ICAT, also stating why it is important for us to engage with the ICAT survey. And from there, also to help staff, we had UWC communication that went out. And if you put the next slide, you would see we had an infographic that was sent out on UWC communication. That infographic gave staff all the relevant information with regards to the benefits, and then when we would be starting the ICAT survey, when it would be concluding, and then you could see the 3 important steps that need to be taken. And then finally, just before the ICAT survey started on the 17th of May, 2 days before, an email went out to all staff. And that email was a personalized email to each individual staff member, inviting them to do the ICAT survey. This went out from the DVC Academics Office. And together with that was the how-to video, because it was very important that they understood the process and didn't get frustrated with the process. So the how-to video showed them the link to click in to go to the Siyaphumelela website, and then you would see which button to press next. Then you would get your an email that would come with you with the code and where to put in the code and how to continue with that survey. So I think with this information that went out and the nudging emails that went out within the 3 weeks that we had the survey open, we actually had a very good response rate. We had over 38% staff that responded to our survey. So we're very excited about that. And now we look forward to the next stage, which is actually planning for the Capacity Cafe. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand you over to Ermien, who's our UWC coach. And she was also involved in all the steps to the initiation of our ICAT survey. Ermien, over to you.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you to the rest of the team. So I'm Ermien van Pletzen from the University of Cape Town, and I just want to take you through a number of reflections around how this process took place at UWC and what my sense of the process was from the coach's position. So the question that I'm posing here is, what is embarking on a complex institutional process like? And like my colleagues, I'm going to focus more on the administration of the survey. And I have a little icon in the top left-hand corner, just giving you a sense of the survey. It's collecting information in 7 key areas, like leadership and vision of the institution, the data technology of the institution, and so on. So in our training as coaches that we've received from Achieving the Dream and from Siyaphumelela, we were encouraged to think of this process of administering the ICAT as a fairly simple process, which I indicate to you in that icon of the arrow with 8 areas in boxes, packed into the arrow, suggesting that doing this ICAT, administering this ICAT tool is actually not that difficult a process. However, I think as you can deduce from what people have been saying so far, it's a bit more like being stuck in a traffic jam on a very complex kind of intersection. Because you have to insert that arrow into a living organization. You have to think carefully around even just unpacking the first 2 boxes on that arrow on the left-hand side, where you set an administrator to help with the process and you set your dates. Even those 2 very, very simple boxes can actually become a bit of a headache if you are kind of embroiled in HR processes still to appoint your administrator, or if you have to select dates in an institution, which, like most institutions well, all institutions at South Africa at the moment, are really finding it hard to reimagine and to get used to new timetables, new ways of doing things. So to find a place in that was not that easy. So we were left with lots of questions and a sense of risk and responsibility. So how did I go about that as a coach? I think I went in really confidently and said to people, this is going to be easy. And I did see that people found it kind of difficult to accept that. And I really had to go back, think about it, acknowledge that it's not that easy, and listen. Listen to what the team was telling me, and then also listen to advice from elsewhere. So for instance, we have coaches from Achieving the Dream assisting us as coaches. And then of course, we also have the support of the Siyaphumelela team in Alan, Amory and Takalani. So I asked for advice. I went back to the team. But what I can just say is that I also know that this is a formidable team. If you have listened to the previous speakers, I stepped into an institution that already had a culture of collaboration, as Vanessa presented. Laetitia showed you how carefully the process was thought about and how carefully it was planned. Plus, there's a very strong body around the Student Success Committee, and right up to the top of leadership, we can count on the collaboration of 2 DVCs in the DVC, Professor Lawack and Professor Booi, who represent academic on the one side and student development and support. So it was easy in a way, despite being stuck in this traffic jam and in a complex situation. It was easy to think in terms of where we've come from, trusting the team, trusting the process. I knew that the survey had been looked at very carefully by Achieving the Dream coaches and then the South African coaches in Siyaphumelela. And to remember the achievements along the way, I mean, like the UWC team has already achieved a great deal and collaborated very closely around reaching the first milestones of the process. So from that point of view, I really felt that we could collaborate strongly and we knew where we were going. And along the way, we just had to retain a sense of humor, and we actually managed extremely well, as Sue pointed out, with a wonderful response rate of more than 500 staff members filling in this survey. And we look forward to planning the Capacity Cafe in the same spirit. Thank you very much.
So thank you, colleagues. We've reached the end of our presentation, and I'm not sure, but I think we may have time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I must really say this was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Very, very informative, well planned, and we were all in awe that UWC got 500 responses. And having shared the planning and the implementation strategy, it's clear to understand why you guys were so successful. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Can we have a quick question? I don't have access to the questions, so I'll rely on my support colleagues. Are there any questions on the Q&A? Alan? Charlotte, are there any questions?
I saw a hand, but it disappeared. It was from Ermien, but I think we can move over to the next presentation before we run out of time on that one.
Okay, great. So can I please ask the subsequent presenters to please stick to the time so that we stay within the planning of the program. The next presentation is from the University of Pretoria. It's the implementation of the University of Pretoria Readiness survey to support student success. This is Juan-Claude Lemmens. Over to you, sir. Hello.
Sorry, colleagues. Been out of the system for a while. So, yeah, as I said, just giving you some background in terms of the UP Readiness survey. You'll probably know me as the researcher formerly known as the STARS. It doesn't seem like it is moving over to, there we go. So the University of Pretoria Readiness survey is based on the biographical questionnaire from the University of Witwatersrand, and also some of the questions from the Student Academic Readiness Survey. Now, we implemented this UP Readiness Survey in 2020, and then also used it last year. And I'm just going to give you some background information of how we used it and how it was implemented. So looking back, just sort of in whatever the word is, looking back at the 10 years of the Student Academic Readiness Survey, you can see that the first year students that completed this came from all over the world. So it's our international students as well as the national students that took the survey. So it had a good run, but it was time for a change, and we needed more management information in order to support the students more effectively. Okay, so in terms of comparing the two surveys with each other, you can see there in terms of the STARS constructs versus the UPRS constructs. The first 4 is basically the same, 5, although there are some differences in terms of the student background factors that we had a look at. But it still looks at the accommodation arrangements. Were those students that enter the university as first-time students, were they first-generation students? And then where the STARS had the more psychosocial sort of focus, the UPRS looks at what is their home environment, what is or was their school environment, financials, background in terms of the employment status of parents, their funding and so forth. So looking a lot at the areas where the university could provide support and also advise students to the correct support department. Okay, so in terms of the referral and the support, you can look at the two. So STARS mainly focused towards the faculty student advisors, so identifying these students with the possibility of dropping out or failing or poor academic achievement, if you like, and then also to the mentorship program, and then also advising them to go and use the online resources on the University of Pretoria's website. Whereas with the UPRS, we included sending information of the students that indicated a disability need to the disability unit. Then also the, just want to get my own face off here. Then also to the UP student readiness, the residence services, and also student finance. So with the information that we had and now had of the students, we could then broaden our support service to the students. So just looking back, information or data makes up a big part of this, and how we sort of made incremental improvements in terms of the way that we present the data to the faculty advisors specifically. So this was where we started off with the STARS macro in Excel. And then in 2020, we used the Tableau dashboards. And then in 2021, we placed this over to a Pyramid Analytics dashboard. Now, the reason for the change, apart from Excel now, from Tableau to Pyramid, is we have a campus-wide license for Pyramid Analytics. And we could add on the faculty student advisors very easily. Whereas with the Tableau, we only had 2 or 3 desktop licenses in our offices, and then the advisors had to make use of a Tableau reader. And there was a sort of a reduced functionality within the reader. The good thing about the Pyramid dashboards is that we can bring in all the Blackboard, the LMS data as well. And that is then combined with the survey data, but also with all the other dashboards that are made available to the faculty student advisors. Okay, so just in terms of the admin process that we follow with the readiness survey, we administer this during the orientation period, and we have a Qualtrics survey. And the students then complete this within Blackboard, the learning management system. Through our orientation program, there are activities, and each week there is a different set of activities, and completing the survey is in week 0. So it's basically the introduction, and that's where we want the students to complete the survey. And then about 2 weeks later, after the 2 weeks has closed, we then provide the data to the faculty advisors and to all the other support service departments. You can see there in terms of the mentorship program, how we identify the students. So we look at rurality in terms of their home environment, and also generation status, and then course choice. And very specifically, they're not in residence. There is residence program normally in normal circumstances, obviously. And then in terms of the DSA, the students that want to disclose on the survey, those names are then given to the people at the disability unit. And then obviously student finance, we've covered a couple of questions on financial need, which we then provide to them. So we also have, because it's on Qualtrics, I have an automated report on there, and then that link is made available to the executive management so they can go in and they can actually have a look at the results. It's the aggregated results, not per faculty or per student or anything, but just university-wide. That report, that's after it's completed, that report also goes to the academic planning committee and the CEBI data analytics committee, where we discuss those results and look at the profiles or the trends from 2020 to 21, which we have now. So it's only 2 years, but it gives you a sort of a glance of how students' profile as a whole has changed, but then the detail of that is then managed by the faculty student advisors. Okay, and then we also provide the faculty student advisors with a academic risk dashboard. As I said, that information can also feed, and it does feed into the UP Readiness survey. And then they can also look at the academic achievement of students coming from high school, and that algorithm refreshes as students are active in the program. And then they can use that as a continual checking of students, and where they can provide support and invite students for one-on-one sessions or for workshops. And then also that information is captured on the learner case management system. Right, so just to give you a feel for the number of students, just headline figures in terms of students that completed the survey. So these are supposed to be first time entering first year students at the university, all faculties. And then in terms of the disability unit, just the numbers from 2020 to 21. And then just a bit of a disaggregation in terms of the type of disabilities that we look at. And then that indicator is also provided to the disability unit. Then in terms of student finance, this is one of the questions. Who finances your studies, and then who finances your accommodation and so forth, food and lodging and so on. So in terms of the headline figures, just over 1,000 students, and it's relatively consistent here. And this information, as I said, goes to student finance. And I'll give you some feedback of what they said and what they made with the data. Okay, and then in terms of the mentorship program, you can see just over 2,000 students identified based on the criteria. And just in terms of proportion, you can see that roughly about a quarter of our students are first generation, although we make use of the other criteria as well to select the students. And then in terms of accommodation, interesting year looking at the change from 2020 to 21, the number of or proportion of students that actually are at home and have given up their residence placement into 2021, which is a cost saving to the parents, which we see is the largest, who tend to pay for students' study fees at the University of Pretoria. And then in terms of student advising, this is a self-report need from the students. So we asked them, would you like to have support from the faculty advisor on study skills, time management, test-taking skills? We see that I think about half of the students actually took up the advising or these skills needs, but nonetheless, they could make use of that in other ways as well. And then for 2021, we included a couple of questions on data and device needs. So we asked students, do they have sufficient data to continue with the academic year, and do they also have a device that they can use, which is dependable. And this is the, we have 358 students with insufficient data according to their self-report, and then also 720 students that said they did not have some kind of device, specifically a laptop or a tablet. The cell phone doesn't really qualify in that regard. Okay, then just in terms of the giving feedback on the intervention update. So I emailed each of the support service departments and asked them what did they do with the data this year. I didn't do that for last year. So you can see that for student finance, they had a look to see which students actually applied for student finance in advance, and then contact those that did not apply. And then they classified them into 3 groups, as you can see there. And then it is a large number of students, so you can see that they also had to employ an additional resource in order to interact with the students. So that is from the student finance side. And then the disability unit, they said that they contacted all the students from our list. And they also had a look at the students that on the registration form indicated a disability. And then they were given the concessions according to their disability. Then you can see there that they, if students don't self-report, there is not much that the disability unit can do, although students might, and sometimes they do also self-disclose later on when they see that there is a benefit to them. Okay, then in terms of the student accommodation, the accommodation staff highlighted or created various categories based on their information and what we gave them. So they said, well, the list that we gave them, they indicated the students that did not register, those that were already placed in the institution, in the UPRS residences, those that never applied officially, but they were given placement, and then those on the waiting list. Now, the focus of the student accommodation is that they would focus on the students that are on the waiting list, and then as places open, they would then contact those students. And you can see here from a number of students, it's about 134 students that are on the radar of student accommodation. And then in terms of the STARS mentorship program, their feedback is that they have a total of just over 2,330 mentees in the program. It is more than the mentees that we have identified. It is because students can self-enroll into the mentorship program. So although we identify students and then an invitation is sent to those students if they don't want to take up the mentorship program, and this is the advantages and so forth. But there are many students that actually do that on their own. So if you look at the UPRS students that we've identified, 852 of those students are active on the program, which is less than half of the identified students, and the rest make up the voluntary self-selection into the program. And then in terms of student academic advising, we have 3 sets of data here. It is the workshops that take place within the orientation program. And then there's the workshops that the faculty advisors do within the faculty. And this is their study skills, time management skills, and so on. The FSAs report that data to the faculty management. So I'm not going to list that here. But then we also have the learner case management system where workshops are also captured. And there's about 530 students that took part in the workshops that were presented through that specific channel. And then in terms of the data and device needs, the university took a position where they sent out a general email to the students on the 12th of March, and then inviting the students that do not have data to contact ITS, the Department of information technology, sorry. And there they could then apply for data, and they had a process that they took the students through, and they could get data through that channels. So that was how that part was identified or dealt with. And then in terms of the no devices for learning, the students, well, actually we had a second round, apart from the UP Readiness survey where we indicated that 720 students that didn't have a device. We then used Blackboard data in order to identify students, so specifically first-year students. The UP Readiness is first year anyway. Then we gave that list through to the student finance, and they removed the funded students for us. So specifically NSFAS, MasterCard, and Dell, and some of the other funders that we have. And then we looked at, were they in a residence? And then also from the Blackboard data, were they active in more than 4 modules? And were they active not using a laptop or some other device similar to a laptop? So a tablet could use, but a mobile device such as a phone would not qualify. Well, using the phone would qualify you for not having a device. So the process was slightly changed to what we did in 2020. It was a process that went through the faculties, and the student would then go to the faculty and then apply through their processes there. As far as I know, very few students, after reducing and removing the NSFAS students, it was a very small number of students that actually took up the laptops. The University of Pretoria also has in their communication that as a preparation for university, a laptop is a requirement. So these are students that are really coming to the university without a device, which are supported through these channels. Okay, colleagues, that's basically just some feedback in terms of the UP Readiness survey. What we saw through the changes from the STARS to the UP Readiness survey is that this biographical information gives you good management information, information that is actionable to some extent, and I think to a larger extent that we had with the STARS. So it was a benefit in changing, although we had a good run for 10 years and it functioned quite well. It was time for a change, and we see the benefit of moving to this new survey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan. That was a great presentation, very informative, and thank you for sharing the details of your programs. I'm going to ask my colleague, Charles, are there any questions? Or any hands that have been raised?
I don't see any hands. Colleagues, do we have any questions? Feel free to ask questions. You have 10 minutes.
Can I ask 2 points? I'm not sure if you want to disclose this, but was there a budget ring-fenced for this particular support? And whether you can share the quantum and the source of that. You don't have to answer the question. The second question I have is, were there any challenges faced in acquiring the information? Some of it can be quite sensitive. And whether or not it was compulsory for students to take the survey, or were they informed that they had a choice in doing so and that the information would be confidential?
Thank you for the questions, Jay. The budget is out of the university's operational budget, although we know that the UCDG funds some of these specific projects, which we've put forth, specifically the faculty student advisors. I don't have a quantum on that in terms of what it costs. But the mentorship program is also funded through the UCDG. And the others is operational things. So student finance, that's the normal, if I say normal, what we generally find at all universities, and it's paid through the HR budget. Then in terms of the survey is not compulsory. There is an informed consent letter that students sign, so they opt into the survey. They don't opt out. And then there is all the disclosures. So it has gone through the ethics clearance and so forth. And then when they opt in, we work within the limits of the ethics committee and all those limitations. So the information that's shared with the support departments, they fall within the limitation, well, the boundaries, let's call it the boundaries of the ethics committee and what we've set out to say what we're going to do with information. That is all we do with it. We don't use it for research purposes or anything else apart from supporting the students.
And if I could follow up, you did give us some numbers of students that took the survey. And as a percentage of the first entry students, what percentage would that be? I think you gave us a number of 7,000 approximately.
Yeah, it was just over 7,000. It's about, that's about 85% of the students that complete the survey.
Thank you.
Of the first year, first time entering first year students.
Yes, thank you very much. Any questions on the system, Charlotte?
Nothing yet, nothing I can see. Let me keep checking.
Yeah. Just to say, we had a very good interest in the session. We had up to 42 participants. That's fantastic. I think people were very keen on the session that we're having currently. It's a good indication, and I don't think they were disappointed.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, keep well.
Very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I suppose we should try and stick to the time so that people that are changing from the different sessions would be basically aligned to our time. Can we wait for 11:10 to start the next session? Would that be in order?
We can do that, and we still have 5 minutes. If someone wants to slide in a last minute question, they can do so. But in the meantime, we can all hang in here for 10 past 11.
Please don't leave. We will start shortly. In fact, we will get back in about 4 minutes, just so that we can start on time. So thank you very much. You can take a very brief break if you want to. So thank you very much for your attention.
Bala, can I ask a question, please? It's Ermien here.
Go ahead.
It's not about the presentations, it's about the technology. So we're not asking questions to the chat, but I don't see the question and answer. I don't know whether other people can see that. So I'm just thinking.
No, I can't see that either.
Yeah.
Can you see that? You cannot see that either. I mean, you can't see that.
No. So I was wondering whether we couldn't just revert to asking our questions through chat, because I think we are missing questions because people are not being able to do it.
Okay, great. I will allow that. So, colleagues, if you would like to submit your questions on chat, since you may not have access to Q&A, please do so, and then we'll access that. I can access it as well. So if you have any questions on chat, we'll try and access them. If you cannot, put them on the other two fora. Okay, thank you for that, Ermien.
Thanks, Bala.
You don't want to ask a question, Ermien, since you got the floor.
No, thank you very much. I always found the University of Pretoria so inspiring that I don't know that I can take the gap here to ask a question, but each time we see them, they're just again strides ahead, you know, like beautifully organized stuff. So very, very impressive.
That's a very big institution, you know that, eh?
Well, that makes it even more difficult to navigate everything so very well. So thank you very much for that, Jean-Claude.
Welcome. If I can just mention, we're basically two running the data office, 2 staff members.
Wow.
Okay, there's a question from Gino Fransman. Does the POPIA Act have any impact on collecting these types of data? Juan, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yes, I know it certainly does. When we set out, let's call it developing or putting the survey together, we had the office of the IGAP office, as we call it, there, and it was the staff that work with the POPIA Act, and they helped us with the informed consent letter and how we should then proceed sending the information through to the various support departments. So that played a role from the start. So it does play a major role in how we position ourselves in terms of data and using the data and sending it out to various support departments.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think we're ready to start our next session, next presentation in the session. Again, it's the University of Pretoria, and the topic is the establishment and implementation of a new electronic student feedback system during COVID-19. And that is by Hlengiwe, Sehlapelo, and Kgadi Mathabathe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So over to you, please.
Good morning, colleagues.
Morning.
Is my slideshow visible to everyone?
Yep.
Good. Thank you very much.
Slideshow, we can get them larger.
I thought I put it on slideshow. Is it not on slideshow?
Well, no, it's fine. I think it's okay for me.
Is it not on slideshow?
It is, Hlengiwe.
Not.
It is. Thanks, Jean-Claude. I thought it was. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for this opportunity to share our experiences on the establishment and implementation of the new electronic student feedback system, what other people will call the student evaluations on teaching, what other people will call course evaluations. This is basically what I'm talking about. Just to share with you what I intend to do in the short period of time that we're going to be spending together, I would like to take you through perhaps the framework which is undergirding the student feedback, electronic student feedback system, and take you through the background to its development, to its acquisition, or just also through the evaluation, through the development of the new policy or policy review, which led to the acquisition of this electronic student feedback system. I would like to also talk a little bit about the theory that we utilize and how we see where we fit in with the student feedback system. And I would like to share then how we deliver it to our community and share how we see that it was the right route to take in terms of the number of lecturers that have they're using it, and the number of students and the response rates that we're getting, and the type of quantitative information we're getting in terms of our, we call it the survey, in terms of the survey constructs. Where are we doing well and where we need to improve? And then I would like to discuss our successes and challenges. In terms of our policy framework, in 2016, a policy on teaching and learning was enacted, and this policy mentioned that the student feedback is important. Eliciting feedback from peers was important, but also eliciting feedback from students was also important. And then it also mentioned the issue of monitoring and evaluation of teaching, which we also fit in. Furthermore, this policy mentioned the 5 principles, which we then try and incorporate in the survey items itself. The 5 principles on which on which teaching and learning is based at UP is on the principle of encouraging contacts between students and lecturers, principle of inviting engagement, the principle of promoting deep learning, the principle of providing appropriating learning support, and the principle of respecting diversity. I would say then that these 5 principles are guidelines within which the office, let me say, the Teaching and Learning Center operates. Furthermore, from this teaching and learning policy of 2013 and 20, which was amended in 2016, we then came up with a new policy, what you say, but we couldn't call it policy. We could call it a procedure, because we got feedback from governance, the unit that deals with governance at UP, which then told us that we can't have a separate policy on student feedback, because there's already a teaching and learning policy. Therefore, we needed to have a procedure, which we then complied. So we then had to come up with a procedure. In this procedure, I will talk about how we came up with it, but I just wanted to highlight the issues of the procedure, the purpose of it. It is to ensure that there is a platform for continuous development for lecturers, that lecturers can use student feedback or student voice to reflect on it, such that they can develop. However, we had to acknowledge also the issue that this data on student voice or evaluation of teaching is a data that is utilized for the accountability purposes in higher education, which we are all aware of. And then we also had to acknowledge, we tried to foreground the issue of development, the issue of enhancing one's practice more than the accountability purpose of attaining or obtaining student feedback. To talk about how we got onto the procedure itself, we established a task team through approaching Deputy Deans Teaching and Learning that had to kind of give us people that they thought would be interested to doing this work of reviewing the previous policy on student. We used to call it student feedback instrument. There was a policy on student feedback evaluation. So, and then all the deputy deans then gave us people that they thought we could work with. And we also consulted our colleagues within the Center of Teaching and Learning to also give us the names of colleagues that they know that are in the forefront of teaching and learning. So we used that team. It was a large team, but not everyone could attend at the same time. So we met several times to review policy. How we did it, we use surveys and data from information policies and surveys from international universities and from some national universities, and we rated the importance of items that we had vis-a-vis and identified similarities in the items that we had vis-a-vis the items that the other institutions had. And then we looked at which item sounds better for us or is suitable to our item. And then we adapted the items, we deleted a few items, added new items based on what was the understanding of the context of teaching and learning, undergraduate context, let me be specific, of teaching and learning at UP. So we basically used a consensus approach to come to the current items of the student feedback on teaching survey. So we then submitted after the process was documented carefully, and we submitted that documentation and the proposed procedure to the Teaching and Learning Senate Committee, and it was then approved. That was in 2019. Within this procedure, it was evident that we can't deliver on the procedure without acquiring the electronic student feedback system. And then subsequent to the approval of the procedure, then the acquisition process began in earnest, looking at the proposal from different service providers, and we had local service providers, but and mostly international. And in this process, this was a collaborative process, which was we were assisted by the procurement department and the IT department, because the IT department, even though we are the owner of this process, the IT department had to look at whether it complies with IT issues that they look at. Also, it had to pay for the license that comes within the budget of the IT. I would like to talk about the theoretical lens which we are using in terms of how we view this work of student feedback at UP. We use Brookfield's 4 lenses on teaching practice, which posits that to be an effective practitioner, a teaching practitioner, you can use these 4 lenses to reflect on your practice. And how we have, you can reflect using the student's voice, the theoretical frameworks. You can use autobiography, which means you kind of reflect on your own. You can also use your peers. So where we fit in, as the Student Feedback Office, we then provide a platform for peers to use students' voice, to reflect on it, to improve their teaching and learning. As I mentioned, even though the portfolio, we know the lecturers use the student feedback on teaching survey to kind of build their portfolio of evidence for promotion and performance management. However, as an office, would like to kind of emphasize these other 3 aspects. The fact that it's a student voice that gives you an insight into looking how effective your teaching is. We would like lecturers to glean these insights and use them to improve their delivery of the curriculum or assessment practices. And we are also hoping that in doing that, it enhances the quality of teaching, assessment, and learning. So the survey that we came up with after the review process it consisted of 22 questions, 5 background questions, 15 core institutional questions. And then these 15 core institutional questions are the questions that we use then in calculating the mean of the teaching mean of a lecturer. And then we have 2 questions that are qualitative questions. Now to come to the cycles, okay, we then decided that there needs to be how many cycles are we going to deliver the student feedback? How are the lecturers going to access using the electronic student feedback? We started initially when we were planning, we had 4 cycles. These 4 cycles were meant for modules at the end of quarter. They were designed according to the calendar of the university. So we were going to run cycles. We ran cycles at end of quarter. We plan to run a cycle at the end of quarter 1, which would be for summative feedback of quarter 1 modules and mid-semester 1 modules if you wanted formative feedback. And then cycle 2 would accommodate end of quarter 2 summative feedback and end of semester summative feedback and formative feedback for year modules. And cycle 3 and so forth will accommodate end of quarter 3 and mid-semester 2 modules, and then the last cycle. However, when delivering these cycles in the community, it became evident that the community was not served adequately, and therefore we had to come up with additional cycles. So these additional cycles are in the gray areas. The ones that we had initially planned are in the colorful ones. The reason we had to come up with additional cycles, there was a need, the postgraduate modules or lecturers who teach in postgraduate modules, which are mostly taught in a block system. There was no way, lecturers felt like they would have to wait for too long to get student feedback. Therefore, we then accommodated them by introducing the additional cycles. So now, this led to an optimization of the system where we now have 8 cycles of student feedback per year. 4 were originally planned. They are fixed cycles, which means that they are run at the end of the quarter or end of semester. Lecturers don't have a choice of the dates of when the survey is going to be released to the students. And then the additional cycles, because the nature of postgraduate teaching, the blocks are everywhere during the year. So we allow a flexible release, which means that a lecturer has a choice of the dates on which the survey is released to the students. We also had an opportunity for students, for lecturers to add additional questions when we started, but due to the uptake of the of using this system, we can't afford to do that anymore. It introduces an additional administrative load. However, with the lecturers that we had started with and those who inquire or who are researchers in their teaching and learning, we allow it, but it has to be done far in advance. So our delivery then, I would say, entails 3 processes or 3 phases. In this phase, we have a pre-survey phase, we have an administration phase, we have a post-survey phase. In the pre-survey phase, we publish the dates for the surveys. So we have enrollment dates, the dates at which the lecturers will enroll for a particular cycle, and then we have delivery dates for those cycles. All those dates are published a year before, or in November or December, and then we review them the following year. Things may change there and there. We send a reminder when the cycle is about to start, the major cycles, the end of quarter cycles, we send a reminder via our learning management system. And then enrollment, we open enrollments for 2 to 3 weeks for lecturers to enroll into a cycle. For the administration, we import modules. In our office, we import them from the learning management system. We clean the data from the learning management system. We communicate with lecturer. There's a lot of to and froing due to the data. Sometimes you'll find that the lecturer that has enrolled is not appearing on learning management system. Therefore, there's a to and froing of communication. You have to let them know. They let the instructional designer know, who then does the association, and then you can pick up the lecturer afterwards. We then, after all that cleaning of data is done, we then send invitation emails to students. When we started, we also used to send pre-survey invitation emails to say the survey is about to start. However, because when we're doing the roadshow, the lecturers told us that they are overwhelmed with communication from the Teaching and Learning Center, so we then tried to reduce the amount of communication that they receive. So this survey invitation message is sent to students, and it's also sent to lecturers to say this is the message that was sent to students. Module specific emails also, this system allows us to send module specific emails to particular lecturers who want to their students to consider certain things, especially those lecturers who add additional questions. They may want us to send a particular message to the specific students who are registered in a specific module. The lecturers quite like that. Then the email post-survey stage, the email, we send email within the system to say that the survey has finished, your reports are available. So the lecturers, the head of departments, and the deputy deans teaching and learning have access to their email, to their reports at various levels. So they can download their reports and then use them. In the delivery, you can see when we started in April last year. That is when we were ready to run a pilot. And we got the highest response rate that we have ever gotten, 72.11. We thought that the reason for that was because we had just gone into lockdown. Perhaps we had a captive audience of the students who were kind of at that stage very worried about what's going to happen to them and stuff like that. So when they saw that they could make an input, the university was interested in them, then they used that period. Because of the success of the pilot, we were then able to run 2 surveys, which were very critical in informing our institution about what were the challenges with online learning that the students were experiencing and the lecturers were experiencing at the initial stage of implementation of remote online learning. This data, it produced such interesting data for the university, useful data, let me say, because then the university used that data of these 2 surveys to then adapt its efforts to ensure that they were able to deliver on the remote online learning in a way that's supportive to the students. And if you look at the the response rates there, they were relatively okay considering that it was an online survey. But I would like to note that in terms of the lecturers that responded were 639 out of 1672, 38.22, which was not bad at all. Then all in all, last year, we implemented 9 surveys. Those are the 9 surveys that were administered. But we will consider these 3 as the normal surveys. That is the one, the mid-quarter 3, end quarter 3, mid-quarter 4, and quarter 4. We will call that normal surveys because we were then using the student feedback survey that was designed and accepted by the Senate Committee Teaching and Learning. And then we are not very happy with these response rates. We are trying to take them up to at least 40s, but they are okay. What is useful to note is the take-up, that the take-up was increasing every time it increased. In this year, 2021 year, you can see that the end of quarter, even in 2020, you could see that we had more traffic in the end of quarter surveys, which then informs our planning. Although the planning, we couldn't have planned accurately because we realized that this year, not everyone was aware of the electronic student feedback system that operates centrally. People would be able to do this and that for themselves, however, not aware of this one. So we are quite happy with the traction that it has gained up to now. And then we then thought that we should reflect as to how we're doing with in terms of the teaching mean, in terms of the items of the survey, the core items of teaching and learning. And it was, we were glad to see this map that our lecturers do well. They're well prepared, most of them. They're rated well. They've been rated well in all these surveys that we have run. These questions, by the way, are based on the LitCat scale of 1 to 5. So relatively, you can see that you are doing well, except in the area of feedback on assessments to improve students' understanding, and in the area of assignments or tasks returned within agreed time frames. So we have started giving this feedback to the community, although not yet widely, that this is how we are doing up to this far. So certain areas, I think this then it then produces quite a nice map for administrators and lecturers to reflect on. When the lecturer, perhaps I should have shared a report how it appears. The lecturer sees their mean, and it sees the university mean, and the lecturer then sees the department mean, all mapped in a graph. So it's quite easy then for the lecturer to see how they are doing. In terms of successes, we find the system that it is easy to use to communicate with the rest of our stakeholders. Students are saying it is easy for them to access because the questionnaire, the survey, they can access it within the email that we sent them. They don't have to go somewhere else. And we have seen, as we have seen the numbers, there is a widespread use within a year. The take-up was quite good. The average response rates are in the 30s, which we're not happy about, but we are okay based on the averages, international averages, according to electronic surveys. We also did road shows, which gave us opportunity to raise awareness, but also gave us opportunity to learn about the challenges that each faculty was experiencing with our process. The major success for us has been in the collaborative work that has been done with the Faculty of Health Sciences. Because the health sciences mostly teaches in a block system, and also when they teach collaboratively with many doctors involved in one block. So we couldn't use our survey because it doesn't serve them. It causes students to be overly surveyed. Our questions are done in the sense that the student will have to respond to one question as many times as their lecturers teaching. So team taught modules are still giving us a challenge. However, the Health Sciences Education Office, it has a manager. It had a system that they were doing before that had been running, and therefore we needed to allow them to adapt and use the tool that we have acquired for their purposes. And this has proven so good for them because they can then release surveys at the end of particular, or just closer to the end of a particular block. And because of that, their surveys are like, the response rates are like in the 90s sometimes, which is just phenomenal. So we have, because of using the continuous engagement principle and improvement, we are able to accommodate different teaching permutations within UP. Reports being available at various levels, it has been deemed to be useful for our purposes. I don't want to delve much, but this, because of what was going on, we had to seek colleagues that are working in this area in other institutions within Gauteng, and then we formed a COP, and so we assisted each other in terms of reflecting on the work of the student feedback. We also, the success has been being able to interact with our community in encouraging them to close the loop of the student feedback, talking to the students to say that I use the feedback for this, and I'm encouraging you to participate, please participate. And afterwards to say, thank you for providing me with this feedback. This is what I gleaned, this is what I can use, this is what I can't use. So that has helped a lot. It is making this, you can see that when lecturers are engaged like that, motivate the students and close the feedback loop, they tend to have higher response rates. We still have challenges though. The challenges in the implementation is that we have this enrollment form. The purpose of the enrollment form is to get from lecturers accurate data that we need for the system. So you get then lecturers who don't complete it fully, and then you have to communicate with the lecturer. You can't find the lecturer because the names are not in full or whatever, or sometimes there are repetitions they complete without informing. If it's a team taught module, informing other colleagues, and you'll find that 4 people enrolled instead of 1, just for 1 module. So those are the issues that we get. We also get people enrolling in incorrect cycles, which means you may be looking for formative feedback, and then, but you are not in the correct cycle, or you say, I'm looking for summative feedback, I want summative feedback, but you're in the cycle that will serve you for formative feedback. So we have to ensure that the lecturer is in the correct cycle for their paper, for the feedback that they want. Yeah, some other things, like we have realized that modules, the way modules are designed, some modules are combined modules, so which means that they are designed to service the different year levels within a particular program. So therefore, if you want to, a lecturer is teaching a particular year, when we are then doing the technical issues behind to load the lecturers and the data, then we have to load that manually, which is very time consuming, because we then have to find the students list for one particular year. We can't then send the survey to all the year levels. So that presents a problem for us. It is also just this system and the implementation of it, has improved the culture of recognizing the student voice and how it can be utilized in improvement of teaching and learning, thus student success, in the sense that we emphasize the development aspect. The challenges that we have had also, we are still having, but we are trying to put up a proposal on how we can address the issue of team-taught modules, because in some other faculty, like vet sciences, veterinary sciences, they still have their teaching style is still like medicine or health sciences, wherein there are many people teaching in a module. So therefore, this survey then produces student fatigue. And then there are also...
Sorry, Hlengiwe, if I may interrupt, we have to finish off now. You've got
okay.
10 seconds.
All right, so I think I've mentioned most of the things I wanted to mention. I would say thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the presenters, all the participants. Thank you very much for attending. I think the great message, student voice, data, student success, that's a thread throughout. We had wonderful presentations, and thank you for your participation. Thank you very much. Till the next session this afternoon.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, colleagues.